Over the following days, I made this place my home. I was alone. Completely and utterly alone. The world I had known, father, mother, Foxenberg, my lovely chambers, my pretty clothes, it felt as distant as a dream. Even the soldiers at the fort had turned their back on me, letting Dren take me deeper into Valeswood, before he, too, had vanished. Now Delara was gone. The only things left were the garden's shadows, the twisted paths, and the sharp ache behind my bandages. The empty eye socket throbbed with a dull, constant rhythm, as if reminding me of everything I'd lost. The simple act of seeing had become alien. An unsteady dance of narrowed width and lost depth, like a wound itching from the inside. One eye. I only had one damn eye. How was I supposed to live like this? But worse still were the memories of what I had seen. Every time I closed my remaining eye, they returned. The Demora rising from the lake, dragging themselves ashore with glistening tentacles and gaping jaws that dripped black water. It seemed like a myth, a story the Inquisition would hunt you down for even whispering back home. But it wasn't a myth. Not only had I seen it, I had been the axis around which it all revolved, the heart of it. Like a virgin at the crux of some devilish Sabbath. For a while, I clung to the hope that maybe, just maybe, the captain of the ship that brought me to Blotseth had reported me missing. But why would he? The last time I saw him, I'd threatened to have him punished if he didn't leave me alone. Most likely, he'd left me to rot in this cursed place. No one was coming to save me. I was on my own, forsaken. On the first day in the garden, all I did was cry. The next day, hunger gnawed at me, but I'd rather die than crawl out and accept food from these heathens. So I ate the mushrooms, the glowing ones. They were bitter and rubbery, horrid to chew. But hunger outdid my disgust. I ate until the hollow pit in my stomach was full. Only later did it occur to me that they might be poisonous. An hour after swallowing the last bite, something began to happen. It started gently, a strange tug at the edges of my senses, as if the forest had shifted just slightly out of tune. The trees swayed like dancers bending to music. Light shimmered along the trunks and began to coil like giant snakes, flowing with the pulse of the fireflies and the glow of the giant mushrooms, as if everything were bleeding into one continuous stream. Soon, the world warped around me, stretching, folding, unmaking itself. My body felt distant, disjointed, like my hands and feet were miles away. The ground rippled like liquid swallowing my feet. When I moved, my limbs stretched impossibly, looping and folding in ways they shouldn't. The trees leaned closer, whispering in a wordless language I somehow understood. Their bark warping into faces, old, withered faces, gaping with ancient sadness and mirth. The world swallowed me. My senses of limit melted, the barriers between within and without dissolving. The saliva in my mouth was the moisture in the air, the tears in my eye, the dew on the leaves. The passage of time became one big soup. One moment I was staggering through the shifting undergrowth, and the next I found myself standing in the heart of the garden, ahead loomed the statue of Legina. Moonlight, or something that felt like moonlight, washed over her body, pooling at her feet, casting her majesty in an ethereal glow. And then she moved. Her antlers shifted with a creak, her stone wings unfolding. She turned her head, her gaze settling on me. I couldn't look away. The longer I stared into her eyes, the more I felt myself slipping, as though my very existence were being unwound. My thoughts drifted into the void, scattered like dandelion seeds on the wind. My body became insubstantial, nothing but a whisper carried through the empty night. Darkness consumed me. Everything I had been, the memories, the pain, the I torn from me, peeled away like brittle paper crumbling into ash. I floated through the void, disembodied, nameless, weightless. There was no past, no future, no self. Just the endless, silent nothing that stretched in every direction. I wanted to scream, but I had no mouth to scream with. I wanted to fight, but I had no hands to claw my way out. There was only emptiness, vast and indifferent. And in that emptiness, I began to forget. Who was I? What was I? It didn't matter. There was no answer, only the deep pull of oblivion, wrapping me in its embrace. The struggle ebbed, drifting away like a distant ripple on a black sea, and in its place came stillness, cool, quiet, and endless. There was no pain here, no hatred, no gnawing hunger or aching memories. Just softness, a weightless calm that cradled me, dissolving every jagged edge inside me. I let it take me. Through clouds of velvet, I floated deeper into the forgetting. Who I had been, what I had lost. It no longer mattered. I was free. For the first time in what felt like lifetimes, I felt happy. And for a moment I knew, I truly knew, that I could choose to stay there forever. But then, somewhere far away, I heard a voice, a whisper at the edge of nothingness. Come back. It was cracked and weightless, a woman's, like a sigh unraveling in the dark. The words rippled through me, stirring something buried deep within the void. A spark, fragile but bright, a spark that refused to die. And with it came the weight of everything I had tried to leave behind. The pain, the memories, the unbearable ache of being trapped in the forbidden temple. I gasped, breath crashing into me like a wave, only to find myself back in the clearing, sprawled beneath the statue of Legina. My chest heaving as though I had run for miles. The goddess's gaze lingered on me for a moment longer, her expression unreadable, before her wings folded inward, and the living stone returned to death. I lay there, enveloped by leaves and moonlight, trembling, struggling to hold on to myself as the last fragments of the void slipped away, leaving me hollow. I had seen the void beyond the world. No, I had been the void. I lay beneath the statue for what felt like hours, shivering as the residue of eternity slowly slid away. Bits and pieces remained. The darkness, my fear dissolving into bliss, the weightlessness. But the details? Gone. Whatever had pulled me out? Gone. Just the slippery sensation of having touched something vast and unknowable. I sat up slowly, rubbing my hands over my arms, as if I could wipe away the memory of how it felt towards the end. That strange moment when it appeared. Optional. As if I'd been given the chance to stay there, forever, if I wanted. But what would that have meant? Transcendence? Death? I didn't know, and that terrified me. I had wanted to stay, hadn't I? That was the worst part. No, the worst part was that something in me still wanted to go back. Here there was only pain and anger. I felt it now, crushing inside me. I thought of that night, the feast, the wet hands holding me down on the table, the flash of steel as she took my eye. Azura. I climbed to my feet, my limbs stiff and awkward as though I was still unwinding from whatever spell the mushrooms had put me under. The statue of Legina loomed behind me, frozen in her serene, stony watchfulness, wings folded back into stillness. I shuddered, turning away from her gaze. The following days I was wary of the mushrooms, especially the glowing ones. I searched for others. They were harder to find, but when I went about it thoroughly, I found them scattered among the roots. I picked them carefully, brushing dirt from their caps and inspecting them closely before daring to eat a piece. I nibbled their edges, waiting to see if anything would happen, if the forest would start to ripple again, or I'd feel that tug at the edges of my mind. But nothing came. No visions, no void, just the dull taste of earth and rot on my tongue. When it seemed safe, I ate a little more. The hunger that gnawed at me softened, though it never quite went away. It was a tedious process, and the mushrooms tasted like garbage, but at least it was better than leaving the garden and accepting those quarters Delara had mentioned, the ones Azura was offering me. No number of mouldy mushrooms or mind-bending visions would convince me to accept anything that vile witch offered. One morning, it dawned on me that it was weird how I never encountered anyone else in this place. I remembered what Delara had said the day we arrived at the Forbidden Temple, that Azura spent her evening in the Forsaken Garden, meditating on the lessons of Legina. So, where was she? I'd lost track of how many days and nights I'd spent there now, but not one of them had Azura appeared. For days I wandered through the shadows of the garden, the twisted statues lining the paths becoming my only company. I took my time with each one, studying them, running my fingers over their unnatural forms. Their mouths stretched grotesquely, gaping down the lengths of their bodies, as though screaming out grief that could never be answered. Their eyes, huge, wailing things, pleaded for something, though I could never tell what. There was something disturbingly familiar in their expressions, an aching sense of loss, as if some vital part of them had been torn away, leaving them hollow and broken. The elegant elven women holding them were no less disturbing. They wore soft, serene smiles as they stroked the cheeks of the deformed creatures in their arms. Their hands were gentle, their touch tender, and yet it all felt wrong. The smiles of those women weren't comforting. They were patronizing, as if the agony of the creatures was a curiosity to be admired, not a tragedy to be soothed. There was no real mercy in the statues, only the illusion of it. I wondered if these deformed things were beings the Ash Elves believed dwelled in Legina's realm, beyond the veil. If so, I was damn sure I'd never want to visit. One night, I woke with a jolt, as though something cold and unseen had brushed against the edge of my mind. My skin prickled, and the air felt heavy, like the breathless pause before a storm. I sat up, heart pounding, scanning the darkness for what had stirred me. And then I saw her. Azura. It was as though my noticing her absence had drawn her here. She drifted into the clearing. The night seemed to bend around her, silent and absolute. Her robes clung to her like remnants of a forest long forgotten, frayed and stained with creeping vines, merging with the moonlight as if she belonged to it. I stayed still, tucked deep in the undergrowth, careful not to stir. My pulse drummed in my ears, but I kept my breath slow, low, hiding my presence beneath the canopy of shadows. Azura knelt before the statue of Legina. Her dark garments coiled around her like liquid night. She pressed her palms together, bowed her head, and with a slow, steady breath, sank into a stillness so complete, it felt like she had dissolved into the air around her. Meditating on the lessons of Legina. That's what Delora had called it. But what could someone like Azura learn from lessons? What use did she have for wisdom when she already moved through the world with the cold certainty of someone who thought they knew everything? I glared at her through the tangled branches, my nails biting into the dirt. I hadn't seen her since the night she took my eye. Now, watching her sit there, serene, composed, as though none of it had mattered, made hatred curl inside me like smoke rising from a slow fire, smouldering and dark. Hatred became the only thing I could hold on to. I fed it like a starving dog, desperate for something, anything, to keep the despair at bay. In my mind, I burned this place 100 times over. I imagined fire swallowing the temple halls, the statues toppling into ash. I saw Azura screaming as the flames devoured her. I imagined her eyes, those calm, condescending eyes, melting like wax as the fire took her hair, her robes, her voice. But that wasn't enough. I wanted more than death. I wanted her ruined. I dreamt of dragging her in chains through the streets of Gratzreich, her feet bloodied, her mask shattered. I pictured the moment Father learned what she had done to me. I pictured his face, the silence before the storm. There would be no trial, no banishment, a witch fire. Yes, that's what she deserved. She would burn alive beneath the spires of my city, her screams echoing off marble and gold. People would watch. They would cheer. And yet, sometimes, the hatred was too much. The rage would swell, so intense it drowned me, pressing against my ribs until I couldn't breathe. At those times, I would collapse beneath the weight of it. I'd sob until my throat was raw, screaming into the empty garden. And when I couldn't bear it any longer, I would go to Legina's statue. I'd nibble on the glowing mushrooms growing along the paths, just a little, just enough to let the edges of myself blur. The statue would seem to sway in the moonlight, its eyes gleaming with ancient, hypnotic patience. I would stare into them as the soft glow of the mushrooms began to wash through me. I let myself grace the void that lived in Legina's gaze. For a while, there were no memories, no pain, just soft darkness, cradling me like an old friend. I cherished those moments. I cherished the freedom they gave me. The sweet, delicate sense of letting go. And then, when I looked away, the pain and anger always returned. But it was different then, colder. It didn't drown me the way it had before. Instead, it settled inside me like a blade hidden beneath the skin, controlled, patient, waiting for the right moment to strike. And so the days passed, each one a careful balance between rage and oblivion. I wandered the paths of the garden, chewing on mushrooms that filled me with fleeting peace. And I stared at the statues along the paths until they became as familiar as my own reflection. The hatred stayed with me. But now, it felt like a companion, something I carried not as a burden, but as a quiet promise. A promise that when the time came, I would make them all pay. Dren Arisith, the corrupt soldiers at the fort in Valeswood, Ezra, Azura, even Lord Helrath. Once Father learned of the blasphemous horrors festering in the depths of Loch Lelesh, vengeance would be swift and final. The Imperial Armada had sailed to these lands before, cannons blazing. It could do it again.